Hey guys, welcome back to Tennis 360, the podcast where we talk about all things tennis. So it's only going to be me today. It's only going to be me, Anthony Hirsch. Eliza is out for the week. She was feeling a bit ill, so Eliza is not going to be able to record the podcast for this week. She'll be back for the next week. So it's just going to be me. But listen, we've got a lot to talk about. I want to talk about Beijing, the ATP tournament going on. And as I record this, Sinner, Alcaraz, Medvedev, Zverev, the semifinal set are going to play tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also talk about some of the WTA tournaments that went down this week. Tokyo, Ningbo, Beijing underway. The Shanghai draw came out earlier today. And then also last week, listen, as we record the podcast last week, the Zhuhai and Chengdu finals didn't happen yet. So we'll quickly talk about that too. But yeah, and get through all things going on in tennis at the moment. But first, we can start with the Tokyo tournament. Kudermetova got her vengeance over Iga Swiatek, which was really I think unexpected. She won the title. She took out two top four players, that being Swiatek and then Jessica Pegula. Swiatek beat her in Doha and in Madrid on hard courts and on clay courts. She lost 3 games in total between those two matches. 6-0, 6-1, 6-1, 6-1 in Madrid. I mean, we know how crazy Swiatek was playing. In Doha, she was barely losing games. It was almost miraculous. Level right out of 2022, maybe even better during that little part of the season, because Swiatek was really playing mainline tennis. It looked like Swiatek was back and was going to take the season away from the hands of Rybakina, Sabalenka, and the like, Coco Gauff now as well, but it's not really what happened. She did end up winning a major this year, winning Roland Garros, but that's not really what happened. But listen, it looked like Kudermetova is going to have a tough time ever beating Swiatek. She gets the win in 3 sets. Swiatek hit a load of errors in that match. She was playing super aggressively in that match. And in one way, I feel like she's purposefully playing this way. Even Beijing, which just started, which is a WTA 1000, Tokyo is a WTA 500. Beijing is a WTA 1000. I feel like even in the match that she played earlier today against Sorribes Tormo, she was coming to net being aggressive like crazy. So maybe it's something strategy-wise I think that she might be doing for the faster court. She came into net 27 times in a quick straight set match earlier today. So it could be something she's trying, but listen, it didn't work in that match. I feel like Swiatek would have done well just defending and making Kudermetova hit a lot of balls, but she was hitting a load of errors, over 50 errors unforced in that match for Swiatek. But yeah, Kudermetova really nailed her in the first set. Swiatek got second set, much tighter in the third set, but Kudermetova got the win. Not a huge reaction after that win, or even after she won the title, kind of Rybakina-esque, but and then she got one against Pegula in the final. Kudermetova really just grinding it out, solid mentality, a lot of slices, but then hitting wicked shots off of both wings. Pegula with a couple gimmies in the first set. I mean, one where Kudermetova was running to the side and Pegula hit it right to Kudermetova instead of hitting to the open court, and another one, double fault on set point. But listen, Kudermetova stuck tough, and it's not easy at all to beat top players. So solid run from Kudermetova there. Sakkari continued winning ways off of Guadalajara, but she lost to Pegula, I believe. Yeah, lost to Pegula in the semis. And yeah, Kudermetova now up to 17th in the world. Swiatek was struggling the whole tournament, though. I mean, she had a match against Hantama, Japanese player outside the top 100. Hantama was up, I believe, a double break in the first set. She was up 4-1 in the first set. That turned to 6-4. Then she had a comeback herself in the second set. Very close match. Swiatek's looking out of sorts, so we'll see if she improves upon that in Beijing. We'll see if she improves upon that in Beijing. It is Sabalenka who's currently the number 1 in the world, but we'll see. Swiatek will be back to a good form. It's just a question of when. But yeah, Pegula was looking good as well. Dominant win over Kazatkina, 6-0, 6-1. Win over Sakari in comfortable straight sets. But yeah, Kudermetova with the win. And listen, I feel like people don't really talk about Kudermetova, but she's always there. Not great recently in her season, but I feel like she's a player that more people should be looking at because she is solid mentally. And when she's playing a great tennis, she's she's a good fighter, and she'll find a way. She found a way against Pegula, against Swiatek. She was fighting well this week, and very crafty, slice shots, skillful player. So it's good to see Kudermetova get the win. And then Ningbo Open, just quickly talk about that. Jabeur won. She beat Schneider in the final. And Schneider, lefty, good shot making, but I don't know. It's good to see Ons Jabeur get a title. She won a title earlier this year in Charleston on the clay, kind of green clay. But her season, and also Wimbledon final. But it's not been an amazing season for Jabeur. Roland Garros quarterfinal. She's gone deep in some tournaments, but compared to 2022, if you can compare it, just not there for her. So we'll see if hopefully that this title can give her some confidence and moving forward. And maybe some confidence going into Beijing. She did have something to say, by the way, about the schedule of everything going from Ningbo over to Beijing, and then also the performance buys that Rybakina was talking about. Well, I'll get to that later when we get to the culture section of the podcast. But yeah, Schneider is a good player, lefty. She was a good shot maker, but not a great serve, and not a big hitter that can hit Jabeur off the court. Too many central shots, a few too many errors, and just allowed Jabeur to kind of play around. The court can be Jabeur's playground, and she was dictating, she was in control. That's not what you want Ons to be. So Ons is too good for Schneider. She's still 7th in the world, is Ons Jabeur, and we'll see. I'm rooting for Ons to get back in it. It was sad to see her lose that final to Vondrousova. I mean, Vondrousova has made some big finals before. It's whatever. It's good. She's talented, but it was just sad to see Ons have such a good chance wasted. So hopefully she can reach another major final. Okay, let's talk about Beijing. Once we get to the upcoming section of the podcast, I'll talk about the women's event. For right now, I want to go over the men's tournament. Okay, so what is there to go over in this men's tournament? So the semifinals, Zverev versus Medvedev for the 5th time this year. Listen, since 2015, 2 rivalries have played 17 times. That's the most. 2 rivalries have played 17 times, which, by the way, is crazy in 8 years for 2 players to play 17 times. Nadal and Djokovic, Zverev and Medvedev. Those are the two. Those are the 2 that have played 17 times. Zverev and Medvedev, kind of similar players in some ways. I mean, they're not players that love to come to net. They kind of baseline grind. Zverev probably a little bit more offensive-minded generally, but very similar players. I mean, completely different form on their strokes, but similar players in a lot of ways. And Medvedev probably a better returner as well, in my opinion. But both, you could argue that Zverev is a better server. There really is a good argument for that. And you could argue as well that Zverev in general has a better backhand, but Medvedev has a top tier backhand as well. So I don't know if that would necessarily be a huge thing to put your fist on to say, wow, okay, Medvedev does it, because Medvedev has a top tier backhand as well. So anyway, those are the top 4 players of the moment, really. If you're not including Djokovic in the list, who's not playing until Paris. Djokovic is the best player in the world after the U.S. Open. But I think that Djokovic and these 4 players, they're the best 5 players in the world right now. I can't see any other argument. Rublev, I'll take Rublev if you want to say Rublev over Zverev, just taking in their whole seasons as a whole. But in honesty, there's really no other argument. Zverev at the moment is up there, and his level has only risen and risen. Casper Ruud reached a major final earlier in the season. Tsitsipas did in Australia, but I don't think anybody is saying Tsitsipas is top 5. But outside of those arguments for Ruud and Rublev, I really feel there's no argument for Casper. He's been, I mean, outside of that, he hasn't really had much of anything. So these are the four guys plus Djokovic. So I don't think we could have gone better semifinals. I've seen some people be upset at the Medvedev versus Zverev matchup happening again. I get it. They're not the flashiest players ever, but I'm kind of excited to see it, especially since Zverev won their last meeting. So personally, I'm excited to watch the two players go at it. Like I said, they've played a lot recently. They played two epics, I guess you could say, earlier in the season. Indian Wells, they played a 3-hour and 15-minute match. It was a best of 3 set match, 255 points played. I couldn't find one outside of like the Olympics where they played extended 3 set matches. I couldn't find a simply, what I'm trying to say, I couldn't find a simply best of 3 match where they played tiebreakers in every set that played more points than that. Nadal Djokovic Madrid 2009, for example, they played less points than that. I think they played like 240. This was a crazy long match with so many points played and so many long points played. But it was beaten twice later this year. Kokkinakis versus Hurkacz in Miami played 268 points in total, and Djokovic Carlos in Cincinnati played 261. I was looking at those stats last week. But still, 255 points played over 3 hours and 15 minutes. Absolute epic in Indian Wells. So much drama as well throughout it. Medvedev also with an incredible Federer-esque smash off a smash, tributing Federer a year after he retired in Indian Wells. But really a great comeback from Medvedev in that match, figuring it out in conditions he doesn't really love, like he did throughout that whole tournament up until he faced Alcaraz. And was exhausted coming off a 19-match win streak, playing, I think, 4 weeks in a row, 5 weeks in a row, something crazy like that. So anyways, and then they played another, probably even more epic match in Monte Carlo, I believe it was. But I prefer their Indian Wells match, but the Monte Carlo match was so insane. It was just as tight as it gets. Every stat in the book was pretty much equal. 7-6 in the third set. I think it was 9-7 for Medvedev. He saved 2 match points. Zverev was frustrated. Then Medvedev straight setted Zverev, I believe in Madrid, either Madrid or Rome, 7-6 in one set, and then more comfortable in the second set. And then, and then in Canada, in Cincinnati, Zverev beats Medvedev in 3 sets. Definitely the worst 3-set match that they've played this year. Was very... not the highest level, to be completely honest, and a little bit, I don't know, it felt like there wasn't that, it was a little bit boring at times, is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, we're getting the 5th one, and Sinner versus Alcaraz. Listen, Sinner versus Alcaraz is my favorite thing going on in the sport at the moment. I don't like everybody saying Jan Litos and Alkinner or whatever. It's Sincaraz. Can we all agree on the name that it is Sincaraz? And I think that this is a matchup that we're going to be gifted to over the next 10 to 15 years. And it started with Paris 2021. Well, really, it started with the Challenger in 2019. I mean, I can talk about this rivalry, but basically they're playing their 7th meeting tomorrow. It's 3-3 in their head-to-head. It is 3-all in their head-to-head. And listen, they bring the best out of each other. I mean, their first 4 meetings were on 4 different surfaces. Let's get that out of the way. Their first 4 meetings were on 4 different surfaces, which is crazy. It's like this rivalry was written in the stars. Obviously, it's all coincidence, but their first 4 meetings were on 4 different surfaces. They've played in every single possible round of a tournament at this point, without repeating rounds up until Miami this year. So they played in the final in Umag. They played in the semifinal, Indian Wells, Miami. They played in the quarterfinal, U.S. Open. They played round 16 at Wimbledon. They played in a round of 32 in Paris. I mean, they've covered every single possible round. And listen, the first time that they actually played, like I said, was in a Challenger in 2019. It was the first Challenger match that Carlos played. It was the first professional match of any kind, basically. I mean, not really. There's futures, but the first top-level professional match that Carlos has played was against Sinner. He was a wild card. So was Jannik. Jannik was a wild card as well, although Jannik had just won a Challenger title just a little bit earlier. But still, It was in Alicante at the Juan Carlos Open. And Sinner was actually leading in that match 3-0 in the third set before Alcaraz would win 6 straight games to win the match, to win 6-3 in 3 sets. But basically, it's like it's written in the stars. The first top-level match, basically, that Alcaraz ever played was against Sinner. It's like these two guys, they just, I don't know, there's something about it. They have a great friendship. There's something about their styles that clash. Alcaraz is obviously this powerhouse, huge hitter. So Sinner, there's power on both sides, but he's this powerhouse, huge hitter, shot maker, just this circus of a player that throw him out onto a court. He just does something crazy. Amazing talent, one of the best talents we've ever seen in the sport, without question. And Sinner is also an incredible talent and ridiculous talent, one of the best talent, one of the most talented players on the tour. And can hit some crazy shots out of nowhere, amazing pace generator. And I don't know, it's a little bit more under the surface with Sinner, though. But what they do is they push each other to their best. Alcaraz doesn't like players that hit hard and push Alcaraz behind the baseline. That's exactly what Jannik does. He pushes Alcaraz behind the baseline. He makes Alcaraz have to hit amazing shots and find pace of his own, find a way to dictate, find a way to be creative, and stop Sinner from hitting this incredible pace. Really forces Alcaraz to try to dictate, which really pushes Alcaraz to his best and really gives him a really big test and challenge. And then what Alcaraz does for Sinner, Alcaraz is a circus. He's a circus shot maker, crazy shot maker player. Sinner, one of his weaknesses is often a reluctancy to be creative and hit with a lot of variety. Alcaraz forces anybody on the other side of the court to play with variety. And Sinner is forced to try to combat Alcaraz's chess moves with chess moves of his own and try to, hit slices, drop shot, come to net, just hit crazy shots, lobs, whatever, retrieve Alcaraz's lobs. Like it's a matchup that brings creativity out of Sinner and brings Alcaraz's best aggressive play from him, and also just creativity from Alcaraz, which then in turn creates creativity from Sinner. It's really fresh, dynamic, creative rallies between the two that the two bring. Huge power players. Both players incredible returners, but not incredible on serve, although Alcaraz is really up to serve this year. Sinner is up to serve a little bit, but particularly Alcaraz, but still, they're not the top servers around, not nearly, but they're incredible returners. That makes every single game close. If you have Isner and Karlovic on the court, no, not every game is going to be close because they're going to serve the other person off the court. But when you have Alcaraz and Sinner, they're not serving the other person off the court. In fact, they're going to be in every single game as returners. So it makes it really tense, but really exciting, fresh, dynamic tennis that pushes each other to their best. It's young guys at their best. At the U.S. Open, we saw it, physical battle to the end, mental battle to the end. I know I'm getting maybe getting a little bit too hyped or whatever, or a little bit too exaggerating. But I'm just speaking from how I see it and how I feel it. And I think that these two are both, to me, although I know people have their hesitations with Sinner, and I do concur that Sinner does have a problem with finishing matches. That's a big problem with him, and getting through tight matches. It seems like stress gets a big hold of him in the epic matches sometimes. But that being said, I think they're both can be really good mental players, really good fighters out there. We saw that at the U.S. Open, both guys being clutch, a tug of war, back and forth with so many incredible moments through that match. I mean, I can talk about that match all day. Everybody knows what an all-time match that is, but we had a behind the back shot in that match. I mean, incredible rallies to no end. The match just never finished until Alcaraz hit an ace down the middle of the box, body serve. When do you see an ace body serve to just say, okay, the match is ending at 2:50 a.m. in the morning, which is the latest finish in U.S. Open history. But that match was incredible. Also, Sinner fighting back in set 2 and 3. Alcaraz saving a match point. Alcaraz Sinner always brings something special. Don't talk to me about Miami, where Sinner came back down a set in a break. And I never counted Sinner out there, and I never count Sinner out in general. And yeah, I think that is a matchup that I'm really excited for. I hope Sinner is healthy in his match against Dimitrov, which, by the way, was a phenomenal match, and I really expected it. Dimitrov has been a really good player recently. We'll get to the power rankings. I may have given him a little bit of a nod in my power rankings. That section's coming up. But yeah, I think Dimitrov's been playing a really good ball, but the mental side is an issue for him. We saw that against Sinner as well. He had break points in the third set, but he just stood way behind the baseline, gave himself no shot, took no chances. And I don't know, it's just the mental side. Dimitrov can't quite finish against top players. He constantly makes it close, which is what makes it heartbreaking. That you see that potential there, but it's just the mental side that stops it. And mental is a big part of tennis. You can be as talented as they come, as Dimitrov is, but it's the mental side that keeps getting to him. But Sinner was throwing up in that match. He literally threw up into a trash can that got right on the court there, which was not a promising sign for Sinner. And he threw up, and I hope that he's okay for that Sinner Alcaraz match. Either way, Alcaraz is playing out of his head, super speed on the court this week. I mean, dismantled Musetti earlier in the week. He beat Casper today, which was closer than I think a lot of people expected it, but I expected it to be pretty good because I do like Casper. And when he's playing his best, high RPM forehands and really grinding it out, and he can hit these shots that kind of grind out and can get some errors out of Alcaraz. But like I said, the people that really test out Alcaraz usually are the big hitting players, and Alcaraz has been too good this week. Really crazy. Some of the best tennis I've seen Alcaraz play, or at least some of the most complete tennis I've seen Alcaraz play. Really good on offense and ridiculous on defense. His speed is ridiculous this week. Getting some shots back that even in your wildest imagination you would say is impossible. So that's Carlos giving new heights to or I don't know. Is it new heights after what we've seen the last 20 years? But yeah, playing tennis at a crazy level. So that's what it is. What else been going on? I can touch upon a few things and then talk about a few of the smaller tournaments on the ATP side, and then I'll move over to my power rankings. For anybody who doesn't know, usually Eliza is here with me. Today it's just going to be my power rankings. But what it's gonna be is basically, whereas rankings take in points from a whole season, these rankings are the players that I'm most excited about at the moment. These are the players that going into a tournament next week, I have the most faith that they'll do well next week. I'm most high on them at this moment in time. Like Tsitsipas, yeah, he's number 4 in the world, I think, number 5 in the world. He's not in the top 10 of my power rankings, no way. Because it just wouldn't happen. So I think that that's what the power rankings brings. But I'll quickly kind of round off kind of the current week, and then I'll talk about that. Murray had a close match against De Minaur. De Minaur proves to be a tough match for Andy. Kind of the same defensive game sometimes that Andy can bring, but just more effective nowadays, more depth constantly from Demon, and a little bit faster than Andy is at the moment. But Murray had a couple match points, but he just couldn't quite go all the way. And it was sad to see. Murray had 3 match points. De Minaur clutched on the first 2 match points, and the tiebreaker, I believe at 7-6 in the tiebreaker, was really an epic match. Murray had a match point, but he was not clutch enough in that match point, maybe a little bit tired. It's hard to say. It was at the end of the match, but still, shout out Andy. He made it close. Wawrinka also lost an epic on the same day. Third set tiebreaker. Schwartzman played a 3-set match against Zverev, some of the best hardcore tennis I've seen him play. He lost. Dominic Thiem lost, but he made the quarterfinals in Astana. Speaking of Astana, the final is Mannarino taking on Sebastian Korda. Mannarino, out of nowhere, has had the best season that he's had. Mannarino is so random. Reminds me a little bit of Cameron Norrie, talented player, obviously. I think we all know that, but a little bit weird. Has a weird backhand. On the other side, Korda is one of the cleanest hitters around. I don't know. I think it's a great chance for Sebastian Korda to get his first hardcore title. He nearly got it in Adelaide with a match point against Djokovic, but Djokovic was just too good there, too clutch. I'm rooting for Korda to do it. Korda would be up to a 22nd in the world, and yeah, I think people too often play off of don't take injuries into account. A player injured, but I think Sebastian Korda in general, when he's been healthy, has played a top 15, top 10 level for the most part. So I really hope he starts climbing up there because he doesn't deserve to be as low as he is. He really contests players, top players pretty consistently. So like beating Medvedev at the Australian Open, for example. So I really hope he starts doing well. There could be a rematch of that Korda Medvedev match in Shanghai, by the way. I'll get to the Shanghai draw a little bit later as well. But yeah, that's one thing that happened as well. Let's see, what else? Also, Humbert played a crazy match against Rublev. Hugo Humbert, he's a pretty young French player, very talented, even a good mentality at times. I like him on all counts. For some reason, he just hasn't been able to quite put it together. This year in particular, even though he's done his best season since 2021 or so, he's lost so many close matches. So it was really good to see him get to the quarterfinals this week and get to beat Rublev. He took a set off of Medvedev as well. Hit crazy shots, huge shots from the back of the court. It was hitting even bigger than Rublev at times. And I don't know, just really, really solid play. Very skillful player, and I'm happy to see him have success. And yeah, what else? Like I mentioned, Dimitrov kept losing to Zverev the last few events. It seems like lost to Sinner in a close match, and yeah, that's been that. Rude edged Echeverry in a close match. Crazy shot making at the end of that match. That's probably the best match that I've seen this week. Some people say Sinner Dimitrov, but honestly, I would pick Rude Echeverry. I didn't think Sinner Dimitrov, and honestly, at the highest level first set. I felt like Sinner didn't play incredible in the second set. Sinner really raised his level in the third set, and Dimitrov played high level in the second and third sets. But I felt like if we're taking level on a whole, I felt like Rude and Echeverry actually played very well, so I would give it to them. And yeah, Zverev's on a little bit of a win streak. From Chengdu. Like I said, just to round it off, Chengdu, Shanghai, Karen Khachanov won his first title since Paris in 2018. In some of his best form. Listen, like I said, injury. People don't take injury into account, but Korda's been playing high level. Jack Draper is another one of those guys. He was injured, but he just got to the final of a challenger this week, lost to another underrated youngster, Thomas Machak. But Karen Khachanov, he's been injured, but he reached the U.S. Open semifinal, lost to Casper Ruud. He reached the Australian Open semifinal, lost to Tsitsipas, who was playing really well in Australia. And then reached the semifinal of Miami. He reached the quarterfinal of Roland Garros. Nearly went up 2-0 on Djokovic. He was up a set and was outplaying him in the second set, but then Djokovic kind of ran away with him in the tiebreaker and then played incredible tennis for the rest of that Roland Garros tournament. But anyway, Khachanov is back, which is great. And then, like I said, Korda Manarino is the semifinal in Astana. And yeah, Zverev on a win streak beats Safulin. He's in the semifinals of Beijing, of course, in his 60th ATP semifinal. Sinner in his 20th ATP semifinal. And those are some of the things going on. If we get Alcaraz versus Medvedev, that could be super interesting, really interesting. Alcaraz is playing incredible. Medvedev didn't play that high level against Humbert. Alcaraz will be looking for revenge, like he will be against Sinner as well, given that Sinner is healthy in that one. Sinner, Alcaraz, number 7 could be on the cards. It's going to be interesting to see how Beijing ends off, and I'll be talking about that with Eliza come next week. All right, and with that, let's get to the power rankings. Before I get to the power rankings, don't forget to like the video if you're enjoying it, and don't forget to follow QualityShot Tennis on Spotify and all the places where you watch podcasts as well. You can listen to this podcast on Spotify. We have everything going on over there for Tennis 360. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on notification bell for live streams that we do on the channel, as well as more podcasts like this one. And yeah, that's what I've got to say about that. And yeah, don't forget to like the video if you're enjoying it. It would be cool if we could get 25 likes on the podcast. But let's see what happens. Hope you guys are enjoying it. That's always the main thing. And with all that said, let's get to the power rankings. All right, guys, and now on to my favorite part of the podcast, or one of my favorite parts of the podcast, the power rankings. So let's start with the men's side, the ATP side. So what you'll see is the first 5 are the same. The bottom 5, I've added quite a few names in. I wanted to go big on it because, listen, if I'm doing power rankings where it's different from the top 10 rankings, I'm not excited by anybody outside of those top 5 names in a huge way at the moment. So I wanted to put some names that I'm really excited about. I could have even included some other names like Karen Khachanov. He was in my power rankings last week. He got bumped off just because he lost early to Musetti, I guess coming off the title, was tired. He hasn't played that much tennis. Musetti was playing well too. Didn't look like he was playing well, but he was against Alcaraz. And then yeah, I could have included Khachanov. I also could include Nicolas Jarry and some other names in there, but I decided to go with these. These are names I'm truly excited about at the moment going into Shanghai. So this is my power rankings. Djokovic and Alcaraz, the top 2, which makes sense. Medvedev right behind them at number 3. Zverev and Sinner behind them at 4 and 5. Zverev and Sinner showing up in a good way this week. They don't move. They did exactly what they need to do. As did, of course, Alcaraz and Medvedev. And then Rublev is up there. I gave him up a spot just because Fritz jumped out of my top 10, but Rublev goes up. Listen, he lost to Humbert, but Humbert was playing out of his mind. So he shouldn't have lost to Humbert, but also it's like Hugo Humbert was literally playing top 10 level, in my opinion. Medvedev, after he played Humbert, said, listen, Humbert can be top 10 one day. I always felt like that. I felt like Humbert has that potential. The mental side is part of it. I feel like top 15 is maybe a little bit more, what would be the word, realistic, but I think he could reach top 10. He just needs to keep working at it. We'll see what happens. I'm not feeling hugely confident that he will get that high, but I would love to see it. And he did make my power rankings. We'll get to that. Dimitrov comes in at number 7. He wasn't in my power rankings before, but he's not a newbie to the power rankings. I have had him in there before because, listen, I've been on to he's been playing great all season across all 3 surfaces. He's lost to a lot of top players. A lot of those matches have been close. A lot of those matches have been against Zverev, who's a terrible matchup for Dimitrov. I spoke about that on the last Tennis 360 to Eliza, with Eliza, but the backhand is terrible. Dimitrov can't set up his shots. Zverev is all over his slices. Zverev does so well to get around his backhand from low to high and hit it with topspin and really take control. Dimitrov can't do anything to set up his shots or really hurt Zverev much at all. So it's just a terrible matchup for Dimitrov, honestly. And then he had De Minaur at number 8. But talking about Dimitrov, I just want to include him because he's been doing well all season, though. And he played great this week. He beat a top 5 player for the first time in 2 years, beat Rune, who really was playing well. Rune was playing some of his better tennis this week, better than he has in his last few events. But Dimitrov really played a high level like he did against Sinner as well. So I wanted to give Dimitrov a little bit of a nod. De Minaur at number 8, still playing well. He lost to Medvedev this week. Not much to say about Demon. He still deserves to be up there, especially since nobody else. I would have put Demon lower, but none of the guys on the men's side have consistently performed where I would confidently put somebody above Demon at the moment. Sebastian Korda is in there at number 9. He reached the semifinals of Zhuhai, and he reaches the final this week. Has a good chance to take home a title, playing really good tennis, really clutch as well. Won a tight match this week, today, which should give him some confidence against Medvedev, Serbian player. Serbian tennis is suddenly picking up, it seems like, but big server in that one, but Korda got through him. But yeah, Korda deserves a nod. Like I said, clean hitter. I like Korda at the moment. I could have put Korda or Khachanov at the moment. They played last week in Zhuhai. I could have put either one of them in there. I decided to go with Korda. I wanted to give him a nod. And then, yeah, Hugo Humbert at number 10 because, listen, this is the power rankings. I want to give my real, who I'm excited about at the moment. If I'm giving who I'm excited about at the moment on the men's side to perform and who I'm excited going into Shanghai the most, who I'm the most high on at the moment, yeah, Hugo Humbert is in there after playing absolutely ridiculous against Rublev and Medvedev, especially against Rublev. So I wanted to give Humbert the nod. I'll be honest, I kind of had a feeling about Humbert going into this tournament. I felt like maybe he was going to do something. He's been injured a little bit recently, but I was happy that he did perform, and I didn't expect him to beat Rublev. I did expect Rublev to win, so I'm happy that Humbert got in there. I'm expecting next week's power rankings to look completely different on the men's side, so tune in for that. But yeah, listen, if nobody else is going to step up on the men's side, then it's going to be like this, where I take the best players who are playing. The players who are playing best this week are going to do it, because different players are winning every single week, it seems like, outside of Sinner, Zverev, Medvedev, Alcaraz, and Djokovic. Goff and Sabalenka take the top 2 spots of the WTA side. Then I got Jessica Pegula at number 3. Dominant display over Kasatkina. Looked really good until that final, where she kind of fell off a little bit, but still was fighting well in that match. Kudermetova was playing a good ball, and I don't know, Pegula, she's been playing well recently. I feel like she deserves it. Swiatek at number 4 didn't have a good tournament this week. It's been kind of on and off recently, so I felt like she can fall off a spot. And then I have Muhova in there, who hasn't played since the U.S. Open, but when she has been playing, she's been playing well. I think Cincinnati final, U.S. Open semifinal, lost narrowly to Goff. Sakkari and Rybakina hold their spots. I almost want to move Rybakina up just because of today. She beat Zhang in under an hour. Zhang hit a load of errors, but Rybakina hit 4 unforced errors throughout the whole match, was hitting winners on every single corner. Rybakina has one of the highest peaks of tennis in the game, no question about it. Very talented player, like a Rublev kind of talent. People talk about talent in tennis. I think a lot of people think of between the leg shots. They think of slices. I know I do. Drop shots. They think of hitting the craziest shots. Talent is also being able to hit shot after shot super hard, even at the highest level of the game, where players are hitting super hard and playing a super high level aggressive play, to still be able to generate pace and hit super aggressive shot after super aggressive shot. I feel like that's part of it too. And it's kind of that Rublev skill, and they can hit crazy shots too. They can hit between the leg shots, whatever this. But people never expect it. It's like Jannik Sinner. I'll be honest. Jannik Sinner is the best example of it. Sinner, to be able to hit hard shot after hard shot, generate pace, hitting corner to corner, that's a top tier of play that's still consistently improving. That is really promising to me. And I think it's the Rublev kind of consistency. It takes skill to consistently be able to hit so hard and keep in the court, hitting corner to corner super hard. And Rybakina does the same thing, and she's a very talented player for it. So listen, if somebody's hitting super hard shot after shot, doesn't mean they're not talented. That's a different form of talent. I mean, you can call talent a bunch of things, but at the end of the day, if you're talking about talent with racket skills, talent with the shots you're hitting on the court, that's part of it. And whether we like to think about it or not. Ons Jabeur gets back into my top 10. Thank goodness. I didn't like to see her out of it. She won the title this week. She deserves to be back in at number 8. So happy that she's back in there. Kudermetova won a title. She hasn't really performed that well in weeks coming into this, so she didn't get super high, but we'll see how she goes. She's high up there. Now, Sophia Kenin at number 10. She had a good week last week. She's been playing pretty well. Not a great week this week, but I'd decide she still should stay in. She knocked off Zhang off the list, who, like I said, lost pretty one-sided to Rybakina. But yeah, that's what I have there. A few interesting names on the men's side. Hugo Humbert at number 10 because he played insane versus Rublev. That's the fun of the power rankings. I just shout out players I'm excited about. Listen, Swiatek, Djokovic, whatever, they could be out of the top 10 at points. Djokovic, during the clay season, before Roland Garros, maybe he would have dropped out. This isn't the rankings. This isn't the rankings. This is the top 10 at the moment. The top 10 players I'm excited about at the moment. This is just me. And Djokovic is currently the number 1. Goff is the number 1 on the women's side. That being said, let's get to the upcoming section of the podcast real quick to kind of round off the podcast, and then talk a few things about the culture section of the podcast, which I so enjoy as well. Listen, that's what you love about Tennis 360. Tennis 360, if I can make a little bit of a pitch for the podcast, if you're just like, what is this exactly? Okay, it's a podcast. I'm going to stop tuning in. You can do that, but I just want to make a pitch. We're trying to bring a genuine, there's no strings attached, fresh take on tennis. We're trying to talk about the things that this sport can improve. It can improve on a lot. We're trying to talk about it unfiltered. We're trying to talk about it in a way that makes sense and bring new fans to the sport. Listen, I've been a diehard though. I can talk about in-depth stats all day. I can do this. I'm in it with the sport, but I want to talk to the diehard fans. I also want to grow the sport. So listen, that's what we want to do at Tennis 360. So make sure you subscribe, follow the podcast if you're in for that. We have a culture section where we just talk about different issues. But yeah, I can't speak for Eliza, but I think that Eliza would stand for a lot of what I said, that we want to bring new fans to the sport and really get a new fresh take on tennis. And we don't want to be super, what would you call it, filtered down and super, it doesn't have to be that way. Tennis can still be a high level, exciting sport of the highest quality. If you enjoy tennis and understand what it's about, it's not trying to force tennis to be, it's people who get it. That's Tennis 360, all things tennis. Okay, so before we get to that culture section, though, where I'm just going to be talking about some things going on, let's talk about upcoming. Let's talk about upcoming before we get to the culture section of the podcast to round it off. But yeah, Sinner. Let's talk. Okay, so Shanghai and Beijing on the women's side. Those are a few things going on. Beijing's draw is super interesting. Swiatek's draw is super open at the moment. I mean, let me go down to Swiatek's draw. It's kind of crazy how open Swiatek's draw is. Vondrousova lost on her section. Also, who else? Azarenka lost on Swiatek's section. Caroline Garcia is in Swiatek's section to get but Caroline Garcia is the only seeded player in Swiatek's way of getting to the semifinals. And then in the semifinals, she could play Coco Gauff, who she does have a good record against, and her game lines up well against Coco. But Coco is the much more informed player at the moment. So that should be interesting. Coco continues her form. She had a good win against Alexandrova earlier today. And then Sakkari as well. Sakkari, Kasatkina, and Kudermetova, who did well in Tokyo. That's in Swiatek's way. On the other side, you have players like Jabeur, Samsonova, Pegula, and this is the kicker. Section 1, Rybakina Sabalenka is a potential quarterfinal. Rybakina Sabalenka is the Australian Open final, two big hitters. Indian Wells final as well. You already know what that is. Two big hitting players. Sabalenka, the world number 1 at the moment. I think it's her first match. It's Sabalenka's first tournament as the reigning. Is it reigning? Is that the right word? It's the current world number 1. So that's something. Gauff Sakkari can be a quarterfinal. That's a Washington rematch. Those are a few things going on. Like I said, Rybakina dismantled Zhang. I would watch out for Rybakina in this tournament. She has nothing to lose, no pressure, which I feel like is a big thing. Mira Andreeva had a good win. She's playing Pavlyuchenkova, who's been around a while. It feels like she's always been around. She's double Andreeva's age, which I thought was interesting, one to point out. But yeah, it's a good draw. Gauff, Swiatek could be a semi, and on the other side, it could be Pegula or Jabeur, which is a really compelling semifinal because you don't know where Ons is at exactly, and that will be a really interesting match against JPEG. Pegula would be the favorite at the moment, but listen, Jabeur just won a title, so she's on some momentum, and that versus Rybakina Sabalenka. So whoever wins that Rybakina Sabalenka quarterfinal, they are the favorite to get to the final and potentially play against Gauff or Swiatek. So at the moment, going by form, I guess you could say Gauff versus Rybakina or Sabalenka. That's the projected final. Maybe Swiatek versus Rybakina or Sabalenka as well. Should be interesting. It's going to be an interesting tournament to keep an eye on Coco Gauff. But yeah, this isn't WTA 1000. Shanghai is only on the men's side. Beijing is the women's 1000 tournament. Speaking of Shanghai, talking about the draw, Sinner has an absolutely nightmare draw after getting to the semis of Beijing. Zverev, in the round of 16, who beat him at the U.S. Open, outlasted him in a physical battle. Sinner was cramping, so I don't know how much weight you want to put on that, but still, Zverev played amazing to win that. And Sinner, he does struggle with illness, so that is, and with different physical issues constantly, which is another thing to go against Sinner. I hope that he can up his physicality, and Sinner has said himself he knows he needs to do that. I guess after the U.S. Open especially, he put out a statement saying, I know I'm just working on myself. I know I need to get better in the physical aspect, but he said, I have a lot of potential in the physical area, so he thinks he can do really well. I kind of agree. I think he can do well. I think it's going to be an issue for him, like the finishing matches, mental and physical. There are parts of it that are going to be issues, but I think he can have Huge positives in the mental side, which he's shown already when he saved match points versus Carreno Busta in Miami. I think against Fokina in Dubai, if I'm not mistaken, against somebody in Dubai, he's constantly having great comebacks. So he does have good for the mental, and on the physical, he can look strong sometimes. He nearly beat Alcaraz in an epic at the U.S. Open. He has won some physical matches before. So to all the negatives, there are some positives, but we should focus on the negatives if not being biased like I am. So the negatives are still a big thing for Sinner, and he has a nightmare draw. Zverev in the round 16, the Medvedev in the quarters, just to reach the semifinals, by the way. It could be a Sinner-Alcaraz final, but probably just judging by the draw, it could be more likely a Alcaraz versus Medvedev final, for example. Medvedev played crazy in Shanghai. He is the defending champion. He is the defending champ. But I think the kind of the pitch for Sinner is that he's playing really, really well when he's healthy. And he will have the motivations to get revenge over Zverev, who must be exhausted getting to the Beijing semifinals at least the semifinals of Beijing. Just won a title last week. He's playing a lot of tennis as Zverev. So Zverev could be tired for that match. Sinner could be more well rested. We'll see. Although Sinner is in the semifinals of Beijing as well. And then Medvedev, I had a case for Medvedev that I don't remember now, but I kind of don't want to make it because that just seems like a crazy thing to do. Medvedev, that's my case for it. Medvedev plays Korda potentially in the, I believe in the third round, and Medvedev lost to Korda pretty badly at the Australian Open. Korda's in good form, so maybe Korda could take out Medvedev before Sinner has to play him, but it's a nightmare draw for Sinner. There's a quarter two is wide open. I want to talk about that real quick. I don't want to take too long on Shanghai, but just to talk about the draw real quick. Quarter two is wide open. If I'm looking at it right, let me see. Quarter number two. Yeah, here you go. So, okay. So quarter number two, you have Tsitsipas, Norrie. Those are the top two seeds of section number 3. Then you have Jan-Lennard Struff and Hugo Humbert as well in there. So I kind of like Hugo Humbert getting through that if he continues with the same form. And then on the other side, you have Mannarino, Fokina, Paul. Tommy Paul is not in good form at the moment, to be honest. And Rublev. So Rublev is tough. Rublev is tough to be sure. I don't know. It's kind of a chance for Hugo Humbert to do something. Am I crazy? Maybe, but I don't think so. It could be a chance for Humbert. Tsitsipas is not really in good form. Maybe he steps it up. You can't really completely count out Tsitsipas, but at the moment, no. Definitely not. Rublev is the favorite to get through that, and he would play Alcaraz at the top. Alcaraz with a very scarily similar draw to Beijing, by the way. Dimitrov, Khachanov, and Evans all in his section, which were all players in his draw close to him in Beijing. But yeah, what else is going on here? Runa's section is pretty interesting. You have players like Hurkacz, Musetti, Echeverry, and Runa, which could take advantage. Also, Demonor, Griekspoor, Eubanks, Ruud. One of those players could definitely get to a semifinal. Good chance for a semifinal for a player like, let's say, Ruud or Hurkacz or maybe Demonor takes his opportunity there. And then, yeah, waiting on the bottom, most likely Medvedev or Sinner or Zverev as well. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting draw, to be honest. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. And yeah, Shanghai next week. I'll talk about Shanghai and what goes down for that with Eliza. But let's talk about some culture. Let's go to the culture side of the podcast as I end off this podcast since 360. I hope this is the only podcast I do by my lonesome. Because it is more fun to talk to somebody. It's more fun to have Eliza here. I'm hoping that we can start having interviews on the channel too and having more guests on that we can talk to about tennis. That's something that really excites me. So we're going to try to do that. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this one though, as I kind of take over the pod, try to do my best with it. But yeah, and okay, so it's been weird with Shanghai, with all these 1.5 week scheduling tournaments. It's a weird thing. I see a lot of fans talking about it, and I don't know how I feel about it. There's definitely pros to it. It gives players a lot of rest for matches. And I don't know, it makes the events longer. It helps in a financial way for sure, to be sure. It gives fans more of a chance to see matches, to have it across multiple days, but it just makes it super confusing, I feel like, to have it 1.5 weeks constantly, and it starts in the middle of the week, then stops it. It kind of gives a weird rhythm to it. You never really understand when a tournament is happening. The scheduling, I feel, is a thing that could be improved upon. I'm not sure if I like the changes, to be completely honest. We might get totally used to them, and I'll forget that I'm even talking about it at this point. But to me personally, it's very confusing, and it's very strange in and out. And there's other problems with scheduling too. Petra Kvitova, earlier yesterday, I believe, was talking about how she was scheduled to play 2 days in a row. First the night session, and then the day session the very next day, early afternoon, against Samsonova, who, first of all, that scheduling is crazy, but then you have to play against Samsonova early in Beijing. And yeah, it's just totally unfair. I mean, a lot of tennis scheduling, that's a big thing that should be looked upon, and it should be optimized to the best ways, thinking about the players. When you think about the players, it helps the fans. When you help the players, it helps the fans, because we get better matches from it. And I mean, it's like they pick and choose. It's like people at the top, to me, sometimes can feel like they pick and choose. The events try their best. It's so hard to maintain an event and figure out a good scheduling. At some point, it feels like sometimes somebody is going to get screwed over. But I still feel like there are better ways to do it, where Kvitova doesn't have to play a night session, then the day session right after. Like she said, some players still haven't even played the round one. And yeah, there's other things to be said with scheduling. I mean, Rybakina and buys, that's something that me and Eliza talked about on the last podcast. Ons Jabeur came out and defended that, who just won the Ningbo Open. She criticized the schedule as well. I can give you a quote from Ons Jabeur. She said, if it is allowed to give a tournament 500 to 1,000, then it's allowed to give it from a 250 to 1,000. The performance buys she is talking about. Back to her quote, I think the calendar should be better. She said, we shouldn't have a tournament in Mexico, then Tokyo, and then from Tokyo to here in Beijing. I feel Japan to China. I feel like if they're going to give performance buys, maybe they should keep the buys normal and explain the rules better for sure. Jabeur is asking for more transparency. That's a big thing that the tournament should be doing better. We should more transparency, to have the draws broadcasted live for everybody to see would be a great thing. Tennis marketing, tennis scheduling, just to make it easier for the fans to really follow along. And that's a big thing. And for the players, fans want to see the players, want to see their favorite players, not have to complain about this constantly. And it does make sense. The schedule is very weird, especially on the WTA side. Beijing is the last big tournament up before the WTA finals. On the men's side, you have a lot more big tournaments to come. You have Shanghai, then you have Paris, then you have WTA finals. You have some more ATP 500s as well that are pretty esteemed, like Basel, for example. I mean, it's completely different on the men's side. The WTA schedule should have a big revamp, and I think a lot of people are looking for that. And yeah, Jabeur is saying, listen, you shouldn't pick and choose performance buys. If you do, there needs to be more transparency for people to understand, because Rybakina was clearly frustrated. In other news, Carreno Busta is back playing after 8 months. He lost today to Pedro Martinez. Carreno Busta is a good addition to the tour. I always enjoy watching him play. Passionate player. I don't know, fun to watch, good game, and always a good competitor on the court. And I'm glad that he's back. He was losing a lot of close matches last year, and then he flipped it on its head and won in Canada. So that was great to see. Maybe somebody like Hugo Humbert, who's been losing a lot of close matches this year, could do the same thing this year. But yeah, good to see Carreno Busta back. What else? There's been a few complaints about the scheduling, like I said, but then also Vondrousova shared on Instagram some hate comments coming from from bettors largely. And there's something to be said about betting. It's a very complex issue. People are going to be betting anyway. There's always going to be some hate on social media specifically, where, as we know, social media gives people a chance to be completely anonymous and share whatever they feel like sharing. They feel like, at least, without any repercussions or very little repercussions. So there's always going to be hate, but there is a big financial side to be gained from betting. that some people feel like should be expanded upon as well, which Djokovic, I believe, was talking about a couple weeks ago. So it's a complex issue, but one thing is for sure, we shouldn't completely disregard the fact that there's a crazy amount of hatred, personal hatred to athletes on social media directly at them. That has nothing to do with them winning or losing. Very personal insults targeted at them. If you go to any social media, lots of comments that don't even make much sense. And that's something that I feel like needs to be at least addressed, because it's kind of ridiculous. And I'm glad that Vondrousova addressed it, because players should not be dealing with that. And I'm glad that she at least addressed it. Hopefully that there's a way that can be dialed down, because it's a negative atmosphere to look at. It's a lot of people don't know much about tennis, don't understand how up and down tennis can be. And it's not because it doesn't take away from the integrity of the sport. People say this person's faking or this person's match fixing. It's just tennis. It's just tennis. And it's like, it's just, it doesn't show that players are weak or that tennis is completely chaotic and anything can happen in any match. It shows that tennis is a game of small margins. What does that mean? It means a ball is millimeters out, a ball hits the net, anything can happen in points, very little things, mentally, physically, so many factors go into a match. It's a game of small margins where small things can flip a match on its head. And the players at the highest level of the game do everything they can, even change their diets or think about things differently, strategy, whatever it is, physically improve, whatever it is, they do everything in their power to cross the line and make it so that those small margins, they go to their side of going their winning favor. That's what tennis is. At the highest level, all these players are amazing. All these players are so strong and flip those tiny margins to their side. We got so spoiled with Serena and the big three showing, okay, but tennis, people can be up here and dominate. I really think the big three era was a really kind of cool and important era for tennis, because we're not going to see a lot of eras like that where people completely dominate. And it was important to be like, wow, this is an era where it shows that, yeah, tennis isn't always completely chaotic. If you're strong enough to consistently push those tiny margins to your side, tennis doesn't have to be chaotic. But usually at the highest level of the game, where everybody plays so crazy and on their best day can play amazing tennis to win the matches against almost any player on their best day, to have these players that win almost all of their matches, Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, to have these players who win almost all of their matches, it shows that, yeah, if you're strong enough, even at the highest level of the game, it doesn't have to be total chaos. And that was proven with an era like that, and also with Serena and with players back in the day, Navratilova. It's been proven before. So that's something that I would say. I think that there's it doesn't show that tennis is completely topsy-turvy and you never know what to expect. It shows that everybody is so good at the highest level and so strong to be able to put those tiny margins on their side. And you do have dominance, like Alcaraz winning his 60th match of the year so far this year. Djokovic winning 3 of the 4 majors. If you're good enough, you can push those tiny margins to your side. But yeah, the betting, it shows a lot of ignorance, a lot of negative side to tennis that I really feel like doesn't do good for the sport. And it's the same people who are betting about football and say, or like tennis is only interesting to bet on. And I just don't really like that part of the tennis culture. And I think it's negative. I don't think it's good for tennis. I think it's a very negative aspect of the sport. I feel like I wish that people would respect the athletes a little bit more. Okay, so I got 2 more things to touch upon. Actually, 3 more things. I'll brush through a couple of them. The Australian Open is going to be 15 days long. Australian Open is going to be 15 days long, and that's definitely interesting. But it was said that that's going to make it so that there are not as many late night finishes. I personally don't understand how exactly that's going to happen in a big way outside of the first round. Because second round matches, third round matches, Kokkinakis Murray last year was a second round match, I should say. So I don't know how that's going to really change that much, but if they are genuinely thinking about how to make it where late night matches like that happen less, then I think that's a good step. I hope that direction, that best of 5 matches stay no matter what, because that brings out the best of tennis. That is tennis. If you take best of 5, to me, you're taking away a large part of what makes tennis tennis. So I hope that that's out of bounds. Although I'm sure that I'm going to have a heart attack reading the news, tennis news at one point, whether that's in 10 years or in 30 years or next year. But I hope that best of 5 is out of bounds. But if they're genuinely thinking about it, that's a step in the right direction. Zhang and Osaka, Zhang's coach split up with her despite what Zhang said is a contract. I haven't heard from all sides, so I don't want to speak too much about this. But Zhang was upset, Qinwen Zhang, Osaka, Naomi Osaka is now being coached by her coach, which is, I just think is interesting. I hope that isn't what happened, because I would hope that coaches, despite getting a better deal from a player, would be better to their player and not just split on the go like that and take their emotions and their games into account and respect them as a player, because Zhang is an incredible player. I'm sure that was part of why maybe the loss to Rybakina, because she was so disheveled by the news this week. I don't know. Rybakina also played out of her mind, so I don't want to say too much. But anyway, that was something that happened. And then third thing, I'll end off the podcast like this. I think something interesting to talk about. On Instagram, back to Instagram, social media, which honestly, who cares about social media? I say this on social media, by the way, on YouTube, where most people are watching. YouTube's great, but Instagram, there was a video of a match in Shanghai 2014 where Federer won a straight sets match over Novak Djokovic 6-4, 6-4 in the fast indoor hard courts of Paris, or Shanghai, I should say, not indoor courts, but fast courts of Shanghai. And what was it? I believe Djokovic hit the ball straight at Federer from the baseline. It really looked like that was the purposeful choice that he did. He wasn't right at net, but he was at the baseline. And Murray commented, Djokovic gets upset in 2013 at Nadal for hitting him, and he gets upset at Federer at Cameron Norrie at the clay season who hits him. And Djokovic was talking about it, and Murray commented, said, I don't know, that's kind of weird from Djokovic, almost saying that he's a hypocrite, which that's super weird to say just because they're friends. Like, as far as we know, Djokovic and Murray have been close to each other. So it's weird to say that publicly on social media. And it's a little bit like at Djokovic. So that part of it is the clear thing that stands out first. Like, did something go down between them personally? Because that's a weird thing to say. Obviously, there's objective facts, and Murray might feel that way and still like Djokovic. That's definitely a possibility, but why would he say that publicly is another question, because it's just a weird thing to do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the actual conversation of it. So you can say Murray shouldn't have said that. He's a friend of Djokovic. That's backstabbing Djokovic. That's fine. I get that. It is a weird thing to do, although I also kind of get the fact that if he feels that way, he can comment on Instagram and saying Djokovic shouldn't take much offense to it. But on the other hand, it's just it's a weird thing to comment, in my opinion. But just talking about the conversation, it is interesting because that is 1 year after Nadal hit him in that famous moment where was that match? I forgot where that match was, but in that moment where Nadal hit Djokovic, Djokovic didn't even apologize. He literally went right back to him. He hit Federer with a huge forehand right at him, went back to apologize. He should have given more of an apology, but so should have Cameron Norrie. So you should never apologize for a body shot. That's the first thing I'm going to say. You should never apologize. That's a valid shot in any case. You should apologize, because that's the gracious thing to do. Say, listen, I wasn't trying to hit you just to hit you. It's just kind of nice to do, because you're like, when you get hit, it's like, yeah, Jesus. So it's whatever. It's good to apologize. But the lack of apology could be one thing that Djokovic gets upset at. But that was with Norrie. Nadal went out of his way to apologize, and Djokovic just went back. It could have been one situation where Djokovic, for whatever reason, was not particularly happy in that moment. And maybe he wouldn't have done it always, where he gets upset at Nadal, even with a huge apology Nadal gave to him after he hit him. But yeah, it's an interesting discussion to be had, and it does come off a little bit weird if Djokovic is getting upset, and then when he gets hit, he gets upset when he gets hit, but then he hits Federer and he doesn't apologize. But I don't know, it's almost striking a fire where there's not really much of a flame. Djokovic is always gracious and very nice to the opponents on the other side of the net. And I don't know, Federer and Djokovic fans are already going at it. I feel like Murray adding the fuel to the flame. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's chaos. He's just adding chaos to social media, which is already so chaotic. It was interesting, though. Djokovic probably should have apologized in that video. It was weird that Murray even said it. But at the end of the day, it is a valid shot, and that's just what it is. All right, guys, this has been Tennis 360. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll be back next week with more stuff. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to Quality Shot Tennis. Follow us on Spotify. Shout out Spotify. And follow us on all the podcasting platforms. And yeah, I have a YouTube channel as well. I have a podcast on there called From Lawns to Arenas Podcast. My YouTube channel, The Tennis Commentary Booth. My YouTube channel is The Tennis Commentary Booth. If you want to check that out, From Lawns to Arenas Tennis Podcast. I'll be putting out my own podcast on YouTube later tonight. My second one for the podcast, From Lawns to Arenas. And I have more content on there, so make sure to subscribe to my channel. If you enjoy my content From Lawns to Arenas, I'll be doing more live streams for Quality Shot Tennis, more content. Don't forget to subscribe for Quality Shot Tennis. Eliza will be back for next week, Eliza Wastcoat. And yeah, don't forget to follow us on social media as well, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. See you guys for next week. Shanghai's coming up. Shanghai's always been one of my favorite tournaments. I love the fast courts of Shanghai. I love the crowd atmosphere. Like I said last week on this podcast, fast courts always make for fast, like kind of dynamic shots and rallies. So I'm excited for that. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming up. Sinner Alcaraz tomorrow. And I'm very excited for everything coming up in the tennis world. The ATP Finals is already next month. And we'll be covering all of it. So make sure to tune in for next week and the next weeks after that. Keep Tennis 360 in your watch list. I hope you guys do. I'll see you guys at the next podcast coming next week. See you guys at the next one.